If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Something tells me that you'd have to be personally involved in a transnational corporation to put their well-being over that of humanity. I'd always support my country whether it were right or wrong. Were the American colonists wrong in not supporting their country as opposed to their values? I wouldn't fight for anyone who hated me and wanted me to disappear. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Does your country deserve your pride? In my case, I'm not proud of it. But let's be pragmatic. Well, slightly lower average IQ than Asians, but greater genetic predisposition for outlier high IQ. We're physically somewhat inferior in some ways to Africans, but in some ways superior. Every race has superior qualities compared with every other race. That's how they've managed to compete. So, sure, we're not especially incompetent. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. No, the enemy of my enemy is the enemy of my enemy, not my friend. He can be, but he doesn't have to be. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Is the law correct? Yes? No? It depends. Sometimes it is justified. Strongly agree. Not strongly disagree. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. No. No. No, I don't think so. Not that I've experienced. It's far greater than it used to be, but oh well. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. In what way? In general? Politically? Depends. I would think that I have more in common with an English millionaire than a Burkina Faso working man. But then again, I have more in common with a German working man than an English millionaire. So, within continents and within ethnic spheres, I agree. And that's how I'll approach that. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. You can always print more money, but you can't unruin the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who would otherwise have jobs and at least be able to scrape by as opposed to starve. Then again, don't pull a Venezuela or a Zimbabwe and get carried away. Or a Weimar. Oh, they got carried away. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Protecting the environment isn't in their interests. Why would they? From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Subjective, depending on the circumstance. It's not a rule, and it's not an inherently good idea. It can be, but not always. The freer the market, the freer the people. No. The freer the market, the freer the market. The freer the people, the freer the people. They're very different. They affect each other, but they're not mutually inclusive. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Well, what else would you do with it? Leave it in the ground? No? Something has to be done with it. And if the state isn't willing to commodify it itself, then private interest will. I don't see anything particularly wrong with that, as long as their intent isn't particularly malicious, which it often is, but this is theory, so we'll go by theory. Disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Why not? It can be used. It can be mined. It can be farmed. I don't see anyone applying that logic to anything else other than land or water. Natural products are still products. You shouldn't be able to have a monopoly on it, though, like Bill Gates is trying, so it's not strongly disagree. It's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. The only way you should be able to gain any kind of monetary value is by providing value. Manipulating the value of others around is not a valid path. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Sometimes, not always, and it isn't always unnecessary. It can be necessary, sometimes, if it's in your overwhelming interest. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Social responsibility? What's socially responsible about that? Are the shareholders society? Because unless you're willing to give out free stocks, I don't see how society is a shareholder. No. The rich are too highly taxed. No comment. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I don't see why not. No, I don't see why not. I don't think we should have an unequal service where it's just private. But if you want to pay to get something done in a week as opposed to a month, I don't see a problem with that at the moment. Government should penalise businesses that mislead the public. If you harm the public, you should be gotten rid of, not just penalised, shut down. Who could disagree with such a... Then again, that is one of the points of the test. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Who would disagree with this? Oh, right. A predator multinational. This is akin to saying, should we punish child molesters? If you say no, hard drive check. Come on. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. You're taking a life. It can sometimes be necessary to take a life. How would you define abortion? After the first trimester, or once it becomes a fetus, when neurological capacity becomes present? I think it should be illegal unless there is significant threat to the life of the mom. You shouldn't be able to end a life just because you feel like it. But at the same time, in cases of, say, if the child is going to have a horrible, horrible disease that will render them completely incapable of any degree of quality of life, it's your duty to them to save them from that. That's a very tentative disagree. That's only because it was worded like that. Generally, I'm very opposed to this, because you are taking a life and that is never inherently good. It's always inherently bad. All authority should be questioned. Yes, of course. Doesn't mean it should be overthrown or not listened to. But it should be questioned. Everything should be questioned. Nothing or no one should go unquestioned on anything. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. No. No, then the whole world will go blind, as they say. If they take your eye, you get rid of them. Then they'll never be able to take anyone else's eye again. I know that's a primitive mindset, but it's the mindset that all the most successful tribes had. All of the ones that believe this are now dead. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Does culture trump profit? Depends on the culture. If the theatre or museum is sufficiently important, taxpayers, I think, should have to prop them up if they are that important, but not always. Explains that. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. In my own experience, I never attended dance class even though it was technically compulsory, so I think you should have to learn about certain things. Language, mathematics, science, but you shouldn't have to go to dance class. So there is that one exception. It depends on the individual school, though, and how good they are at teaching. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. If a group is overwhelmingly predisposed to a certain behavior and to thrive under a certain condition, introducing them to a different condition that would hurt them and also hurt the natives who are accustomed to that new condition is not good. Different sorts of people. They do have their rights, so I don't see why not. A dog born in a stable is still a dog, not a horse. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. If you need to do that, you've failed. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. It's natural, but it's not desirable. You shouldn't have to. If you have to keep secrets from your parents, then there's something off. Then again, there are certain things. There are certain things where it is somewhat desirable to keep it from your parents if your parents aren't as understanding of it as you or as knowledgeable on it as you, and they'd take it the wrong way. It depends heavily on the context. It is natural. Not always desirable, though. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offence. I have no problem with marijuana, but I think that we're on a slippery slope of legalising thing after thing. Legalising marijuana, possession, would lead to legalising the production. It would then lead to legalising the possession of some other drug. Years and years down the line, the entire thing is completely out of whack, and it would have been better not to legalise any of it in the first place. Does anyone need this? No. It should be legal for medical use, if it works. But for pragmatic purposes, I think it should be, but not severely punished at all. Slap on the wrist. Teach them that it still isn't good for you, regardless of how much it calms you down. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. This could either mean that, well, this depends on the jobs. Are the jobs good, or are they wage slaves? As it is at the moment, I disagree, because the economy is dysfunctional, and all the jobs are broken. It's an employer's market, severely. People with serious inheritable disability should not be allowed to reproduce. People with serious inheritable disabilities. This isn't the same as saying that the baby should be aborted under all these circumstances. Serious. What's serious? Curable? Treatable? If it's curable and treatable and they can live a good life. If a child's born with HIV, because the parents had HIV, the child can be treated and the HIV can be controlled. But if you have severe muscular dystrophy that can't be controlled, then no, I don't think that that's desirable. I think that you're actively harming another individual for no good reason other than your own will to reproduce. Of course, the best path would be genetic engineering, but as things stand right now, it depends heavily, but under certain circumstances, it hurts more to live a life of constant suffering than to not have children. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. It depends on the discipline. Who's doling it out? Are their rules fair? Are they correct or are they wrong? It's not the most important thing for children to learn unless the rules are absolutely airtight. They're objectively correct. The better the rule, the more important it is that they learn it and accept it. The less desirable the rule, the less desirable it is that they should learn to accept it. At the moment, as things stand, I don't agree with a lot of the rules. So, no. There are no savage and civilized peoples, there are only different cultures. Look at history. I won't elaborate. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. It depends on the society. Does the society deserve your efforts? If it does, and your effort would go towards a good cause, then I think you should have to work. But if all of your tax money is going towards foreign aid for nations that don't need it, people who hate you and would see you destroyed, and military projects that suck up billions of USD equivalent a year and don't deliver anything but the dead bodies of children who wouldn't have done anything to you even if they could. Not desirable. It depends. It depends. Generally. But if providing tax revenue would actively harm humanity because of what the tax revenue is going towards, fine. If you can find a way to avoid paying tax, you should work, because it's good money, and you can guarantee that your money isn't going towards developing a missile that will be fired at people who don't deserve to be fired at. When you are troubled, it's better to think, not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. When you are troubled, it's better to be deluded. No. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within the new country. A Frenchman can become English. A Russian can become English. An Englishman can become Polish. Can a Zimbabwean become Chinese? No. Generally, I disagree. It depends on the predispositions of the people that you come from. What's good for all the most successful corporations is always ultimately good of us. Good for all of us. Again, in order to agree with this, you would have to be a successful corporation because no one else agrees with that in their right mind. They have their own interests, and their interests never align with ours. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Same as the museum. Is it valuable or not? The more valuable, maybe. Less valuable, maybe not. I disagree generally, not always. But I think sometimes it is desirable. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counter-terrorism. Whose civil liberties? It depends. Are you part of the group that overwhelmingly commits terrorist atrocities? If so, you're going to have to sort that out amongst yourselves and take what you get. Because that's not the fault of the people who you're attacking. My civil liberties are fine. My civil liberties shouldn't be excessively curbed because I'm not contributing to it and I don't follow the same system as those who fight and die in the name of horrible causes and attack civilians. Mine aren't. Because they don't have to be. It doesn't make sense for mine to be. But some, it does make sense. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. That is an advantage. Okay. That is a true statement. Does it mean that it's superior? Not inherently, but that is a true statement. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Wrongdoer can change day by day. You could be a wrongdoer next month and you wouldn't know it today. You can't know. If those in charge of surveilling you are trustable, then I would agree. But I do not trust the people with the power to surveil me. So no. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Yes. Obviously. Saves a lot of money. And they deserve it. If someone touched my kid, I expect that the law should do to them what I would. Or, let me do to them as I wish. Keep the blood off their hands. Organised vigilante activity, perhaps. State-sponsored vigilantism. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Those who know best should be given authority over the things over which they know best. A plumber shouldn't dictate neurosurgery to a neurosurgeon, nor should a neurosurgeon dictate plumbing to a plumber. Everyone knows the most about something, and they should have authority over that field. Should there be people who are able to dictate others on all manner of measures and subjects, even if they don't understand as much? No. No, it should be based on merit and knowledge. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Extrinsic value isn't value. If it doesn't represent anything, it's not art. Abstract art is not art. An abstract hot dog made of wood is not a hot dog, it's a piece of wood. Apply that logic. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. It depends. Are they a rapist? Or did they rob a store? You shouldn't punish someone for robbing a store, if they needed to. Depends on how necessary the crime was. But, in the case of violent crime, if you're harming society substantially, I think that we could do with a lot more punishment, as opposed to rehabilitation, at the moment. But that won't always be true. But for the moment, it is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Some criminals, yes, obviously. You can't rehabilitate a terrorist or a rapist. Obviously. Come on. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. I think so. This question tests whether you're more of a an idealist, a dreamer, or a pragmatist? I'd consider myself a materialist and a pragmatist, so sure. Just because they're more important doesn't mean that one doesn't deserve to exist. They all have their place, but would I rather have a society of manufacturers and businessmen who know what they're doing, or writers and artists that may come up with certain ideas that harm society and most likely will? Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. If they can be, but a lot of the time they can't be homemakers because they have to have careers, otherwise their family would starve. Their first duty is to be homemakers, but sometimes you have to prioritise things over duty, like survival, as we do nowadays. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Objectively speaking, of course they are. Just look at the lithium mines. I couldn't get that word out. Just look at lithium mines, all kind of mining. It's horrible. They went from exploiting their own people to exploiting others. I'll still keep buying Nestle products though, because what difference am I capable of making about that? But they are certainly exploiting them. You'd have to be crazy to disagree with that. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Is the establishment right or wrong? If they are right, yes. If they are wrong, no. At the moment, the establishment is wrong, so no. Astrology accurately explains many things. No. Prove it. You cannot be moral without being religious. Religion comes from morality. Morality doesn't come from religion. Religion is downstream from other factors. Where else do you think it came from? God? Religion didn't come from God. People invented it as a method of controlling people over whom they had authority and who would listen to them. You can be moral without being religious. You can be moral without being religious. It depends entirely on the person. If you're stupid and inherently immoral, you're far more likely to be moral if you believe that there is someone in the sky who's going to kill you and do horrible things to you if you act badly. If you have no intent of acting badly, you don't need to be religious. Generally, people do need to be religious, though. Just some don't have to be. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. It depends on how efficient they are. If the social security is more efficient and effective, then it's better. If the charity is more efficient and effective, then it's better. I disagree that it is inherently more effective, but it can go either way, and it does. Some people are naturally unlucky. Luck is applying conscious intent to circumstance. There is no such thing. Some people are in bad circumstances that they don't really deserve to be in. Doesn't mean they're technically unlucky. But going by the intent of the question, some people are in circumstances that they absolutely do not deserve to be in and have no power to get out of. I agree. That's what that means. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Do I agree with the religious values? I don't want them to instill religion. Of course not. Religious values? Are they exclusive to religion? No value is exclusive to religion, but belief in God. So, no. No, I'll instill my values upon my children. I expect the school to stay out of that. I likely won't even send my children to school if I have them. I don't trust the system. I have great disdain for it, out of personal experience. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Marriage is arbitrary. Sex outside a committed relationship is immoral. But going by the intent, it's the intent that matters. I'll explain the difference. Committed relationships and marriages practically are the same. Legally, they may not be, but practically they are the same. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Same-sex couples have far higher levels of abuse amongst themselves and in regards to their children. Look that up. Too risky. Too risky. The opportunity cost is just not there for them. I would much rather 1,000 same-sex couples be deprived of having children than have one child be abused by them when they didn't have to be because of their predispositions. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Should knife fighting depicting consenting adults be legal for the adult population? No. And this is more harmful than that, because this cuts deep into your basest desires. In some cases, they even trump the will to survive. That's not innocent. That's not something to mess with, ever. And this doesn't just mess with it. It takes a chainsaw to your mind. No. No. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. If they're in a committed relationship and everything they do in there is only ever going to affect them, then it's not business of anyone else. But I don't know. What if they're doing things that are horrible? What if they're cheating on their partners? Two adulterers can consent, but I believe that's business of the state because they're actively harming society's moral fabric. That's not always inherently true, and I strongly disagree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Sexuality's fluid, so no one can feel naturally homosexual or heterosexual. Your sexuality is determined by how you were raised, the environment in which you were raised, and to some extent you can be more or less masculine, more or less feminine. I don't think that there's a gay gene, because any gene that predisposes you not to reproduce would be stamped out in a generation, and it would be repeatedly stamped out wherever it mutated. Homosexual isn't inherently natural, and I would wager that the only way that anyone is ever homosexual is if their sexual development is stunted or misdirected. Is that a slight on them? No. Of course not. But no. This goes for all sexuality, especially for this. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. See pornography. You can't go messing with the basest desires of human beings and expect everything to be fine. You can't expect not to fall down a slippery slope. The best way to avoid that is not to step on the slope in the first place and to take a hard line regarding these things, even if it is unreasonable. Your descendants at 500 years will thank God and thank you that you made the decision to oppose these things in their infancy rather than let them get too far. Regardless of that, I do think it's gone too far already. We're already on that slippery slope and we're already done. I wish we could have done something about it, but we didn't. Well, those with authority didn't. They actively made it worse. Okay. This doesn't surprise me. Usually you see a line going from the bottom left to the top right. I would wager that left is authoritarian and right is libertarian. So I find it unusual that people find this diagonal line as opposed to this one. Because generally the right believes in personal freedom and independence, the left believes in collectivism. Collectivism is authoritarian, individualism is libertarian. So I think this is only logical that I ended up somewhere in this line as opposed to this line, because the usual distribution makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I don't understand it at all. This doesn't surprise me. No. I think if the questions were worded correctly, or were they more poignantly put, I think I'd be far further up. Because then I wouldn't have to be pragmatic about things and I could actually say precisely what I think. But as things stand, I've had to be pragmatic, and as such, I sit right here. Hey guys, I guess that's it.